When you think of history's most brutal dictators, names like Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, or Pol Pot instantly come to mind. Their cruel actions and the suffering they caused echo through the ages, deeply etched into our collective memory. We remember the millions lost, the nation shattered, the sheer scale of their evil. But what if I told you that the darkest corners of history hide figures whose cruelty rivals even the most infamous? Dictators whose reigns of terror were so profound, so utterly bizarre, or so devastating. Shockingly, they aren't household names. Dictator number 1. Francisco Solano López, the man who destroyed his nation. Our first entry takes us to 19th century South America, to a small, landlocked nation called Paraguay, and it's ambitious. Francisco Solano López, a leader who's completely paranoid. López took over his dad's power in 1862. He saw himself as a Napoleon of South America and dreamed of creating a vast, greater Paraguay. This grand vision, however, was built on a foundation of extreme ruthlessness. A terrifying disregard for human life, especially the lives of his people. In 1864, López plunged Paraguay into the War of the Triple Alliance. He fought against the combined forces of Brazil, Argentina, and Uruguay. This was a conflict so brutal, so devastating, that it almost annihilated his own country's male population. But López's cruelty wasn't just directed at his enemies. His most horrifying acts were often against his citizens. As the war dragged on and his nation faced impossible odds, López's paranoia spiraled out of control. He ordered the execution of thousands of his people, including his brothers, sisters, cabinet ministers, bishops, and even foreign diplomats, all on mere suspicion of treason. His soldiers were forced to fight until their last breath, even when facing overwhelming odds. When men ran out, he sent women, children, and the elderly to the front lines as conscripts, effectively using them as human shields to fuel his delusion. He also ordered a scorched earth policy, burning his towns and farms to deny resources to the enemy, further starving and displacing his already suffering populace. By the war's end in 1870, López had died in battle. Paraguay's population dropped drastically, with some estimates saying up to 90% of men lost their lives. Can you believe that? Francisco Solano López is a haunting reminder of how a dictator's greed and fear can almost wipe out a whole nation. Number 2. Ranavalona I, Madagascar's ruthless queen from the heart of the Indian Ocean. We turn to the island nation of Madagascar in the 19th century. Here, a monarch ruled whose reign earned her the infamous title, Ranavalona the Cruel. Ranavalona I became queen in 1828. She was fiercely determined to resist European influence, especially from the British and French, and to bring her island under absolute control. Her 33-year reign was marked by intense nationalism, isolation, and harsh crackdowns on anything seen as a threat. Her cruelty was systematic and widespread. One of her most notorious methods was the Tangina ordeal. This was a traditional trial by ordeal, where suspects, often accused of sorcery or, more commonly, of practicing Christianity, they were forced to swallow 3 pieces of chicken skin along with the poisonous Tangina nut. If they vomited up all 3 pieces, they were declared innocent. If they died, they were guilty. Estimates suggest that tens of thousands perished in this horrific manner. Ranavalona also launched a brutal persecution of Christians. Those who converted to Christianity were subjected to horrific public executions, including being thrown off cliffs, boiled alive, or burned at the stake. She saw their faith as a foreign influence that undermined her absolute authority. Beyond religious persecution, she implemented a system of forced labor known as fanampona. This compelled her subjects to work on massive infrastructure projects and military campaigns, often under terrible conditions that led to widespread death from exhaustion, disease, and starvation. Her policies, combined with the executions and persecutions, led to a massive decline in Madagascar's population. Ranavalona I died naturally in 1861. Her legacy remains deeply divisive. Seen by some as a strong leader who protected Malagasy independence, but by many others as a ruthless tyrant who caused unimaginable suffering and set her nation back decades. Dictator 3. Messias Injama Bio, Africa's forgotten dictator. Our third dictator brings us to the small West African nation of Equatorial Guinea in the 1970s. Here, a man named Francisco Messias Injama Biyogo orchestrated a reign of terror so absolute it left his nation utterly shattered and isolated. Biyogo became the first president of independent Equatorial Guinea in 1968. He swiftly moved to consolidate power, declaring himself president for life in 1972, and then in 1973. Simply unique miracle. What followed was a systematic dismantling of every institution and a descent into madness. Biyogo's cruelty was relentless and deeply personal. He systematically murdered political opponents, intellectuals, and anyone he perceived as a threat. His executions were often public and horrifying, with estimates suggesting that tens of thousands were killed, sometimes to the tune of Christmas music. He targeted anyone with an education. Teachers, doctors, and civil servants were executed or forced to flee, leading to the collapse of the country's social services and infrastructure. Hospitals were closed, leaving the sick to die. Education ceased to exist, plunging the population into forced ignorance. Economically, his policies were catastrophic. He ordered the closure of all banks and wiped out all personal bank accounts. He even outlawed fishing, a vital industry for coastal communities, and banned the use of traditional canoes. This led to widespread famine, economic ruin, and turned his country into a personal prison from which escape was nearly impossible. Messias Injama Bio was removed from power and killed by his nephew in 1979. His rule devastated Equatorial Guinea, turning it from one of Africa's most promising nations into one of its poorest and most repressive. It's a legacy from which the country still struggles to recover today, making him truly Africa's forgotten monster. The stories so far are truly exciting, aren't they? History can hide so much darkness, right? Loving these wild stories? Smash that like button and let's keep the fun going. It helps us uncover more of these hidden histories and share them with a wider audience. Dictator 4. Jean-Bédel Bokassa, the self-proclaimed emperor with a dark side. Next, we travel to the Central African Republic in the 1970s, home to the bizarre and horrifying reign of Jean-Bédel Bokassa, a man whose megalomania led him to declare himself emperor famously. A military officer, Bokassa seized power in a coup in 1966. Fascinated by Napoleon Bonaparte, he quickly consolidated power through fear and extreme violence. His rule became a terrifying blend of unmatched vanity, unbelievable personal opulence, and savage brutality, shadowed by chilling rumors that painted an even darker picture. Bokassa's most infamous act of self-indulgence was his self-coronation as Emperor of the Central African Empire in 1977. He spent an estimated one-third of the country's national budget on this lavish ceremony, wearing a crown reportedly worth millions, while his people suffered extreme poverty and starvation. This was the ultimate display of detachment from his suffering population. But beneath the absurd opulence lay a chilling cruelty. Bokassa was known to personally participate in the brutal torture and murder of his political opponents. He maintained a private prison and execution grounds. In 1979, his monstrousness reached a peak when he ordered the massacre of school children who were protesting against wearing mandatory, expensive uniforms, which, ironically, were produced in a factory he owned. Even more disturbing were the widespread and credible rumors that circulated about Bokassa, that he consumed the flesh of his political opponents. While never been definitively proven in court, These whispers of cannibalism further cemented his reputation as one of Africa's most grotesque tyrants. Bokassa was overthrown in 1979 with French assistance and later tried and convicted of murder. He died in 1996. His legacy is one of extreme megalomania, horrific human rights abuses, and leaving his country in perpetual instability and economic ruin. Dictator 5. Mehmed Talat Pasha, the man behind the Ottoman Empire's destruction. Our final entry takes us back to the tumultuous early 20th century, to the final crumbling years of the Ottoman Empire, and the figure of Mehmed Talat Pasha. While the horrors he orchestrated are infamous, his name often remains less recognized as a standalone dictator compared to later tyrants of the 20th century, making his specific role unexpectedly chilling. Talat Pasha was a key leader of the Young Turks, a political movement that effectively seized control of the Ottoman Empire during World War I as Minister of Interior and later Grand Vizier. He held immense power and became the primary architect behind one of history's most horrific atrocities, the Armenian Genocide. His cruelty was not that of a madman on the battlefield, but of a cold one, calculating bureaucrat. Talat Pasha systematically ordered the mass deportations of Armenian civilians from their ancestral lands. These deportations were, in reality, death marches, where Armenians were driven into the desert with no food or water, subjected to starvation, disease, and systematic massacres by Ottoman soldiers and irregulars. Talat Pasha's handwritten orders reveal a chilling bureaucratic approach to annihilation. He ensured that no trace of the Armenian population would remain, meticulously planning the confiscation of their property and even ordering their bodies to be destroyed to hide the evidence. His words themselves conveyed the intent. The Armenian question is settled. There is no Armenian question anymore. His cruelty lay in his unwavering commitment to this final solution for the Armenians, seeing them as an internal threat to the Ottoman Empire. His actions led to the deaths of over 1 million Armenians, a systematic extermination that set a horrifying precedent for later genocides. After the Ottoman defeat in World War I, Talat Pasha fled to Germany. However, he was assassinated in 1921 by an Armenian survivor in Berlin, seeking justice. His legacy is tragically, inextricably linked to one of history's first modern genocides. A man who, from behind a desk, oversaw unimaginable human suffering. Conclusion: the lingering shadow of power. From the self-destructive paranoia of Francisco Solano López, who sacrificed his people for a delusion, to the calculating cruelty of Ranavalona I, the bizarre imperial brutality of Jean-Bédel Bokassa, the utter devastation wrought by Messias Injama Bio, and the chilling bureaucratic annihilation orchestrated by Mehmed Talat Pasha. These 5 figures remind us that the depths of human cruelty know no bounds and often lurk where we least expect them. Their stories often overshadowed by more famous tyrants. Please like this video to help us bring more untold stories to light. And subscribe to Tyrant Tales for more chilling exposes on power and history.